So thank you for listening. Now we'll answer any questions on what we spoke about today.
Thank you so much, Brian, for that very informative presentation, as always. So, all right, so now we're going to begin our Q&A session. And for the audience sake, I just want to go over a few things. We do not take questions directly from chat. What we do is we ask that everybody raise their hands in Zoom. In order to do that, if you're not familiar with it, the second button from the right is the reactions button. You're going to click on that, and then you'll select raise hands. And then I'll call on you. When I do, just state where you're from and ask your question. And we just ask that questions are brief and on topic. And with that, I will get started. So let's go ahead and call on Tomer. Where are you from and what's your question? Tomer Jackman. Maybe I'm not saying that right.
Hi, yes, thank you. I'm from Massachusetts. My question is about how would you go about helping a 16-year-old who's been diagnosed with Crohn's?
Well, quite simply, if you go to conventional thinkers, and unfortunately, many of the doctors who now purport they're natural doctors, they're going to tell you the worst thing to do is raw food. And that's why they're going to tell you it's a chronic disorder that never, ever gets well. And we see the total opposite of that. Now, of course, that little child can't walk into Hippocrates or into your home or to a salad bar and eat the way that you or I may. But there's ways to blend, process, and utilize particular foods that are going to be mucilaginous and help to coat their intestinal tracts and make it a comfortable process. Now, why this works, and we've seen it work in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases, is because you actually have something like a cave that is so filled with mold and death and dying and lack of life, it's stagnant, is that you've got to bring light in it and you have to bring life into it. So by eating bland things, as they suggest, or even worse than that, animal-based foods, what you're literally doing is perpetuating that. You're actually feeding the death and dying scenario. When you start to bring this in, slowly but surely, the tissue mass, the cells of the large intestine, and to some degree, the small intestine, start to now trust. You're giving them oxygen, you're giving them enzymes, you're giving them hormones, phytochemicals, you're giving them vitamins, you're giving them proteins, you're giving them minerals, and they start to respond. Just like when you get a wound and the body heals itself, picture somebody with colitis or Crohn's disease, diverticulosis, diverticulitis, and to some degree, irritable bowel syndrome, being a wound within your intestine. So again, it has to be done thoughtfully, intelligently, and by people like us who are well experienced with this. And there are things that I would really immediately tell you to start. If you can get this young one to do it, out of all the different herbal medicines and natural medicines, and even allopathic medicines I've seen, the most effective is the juice of fenugreek sprouts. There's a mucilaginous gel that is unbelievable. There's medicinal properties in there. Actually, the pharmaceuticals are actually using these for steroidal drugs now, anti-inflammatory drugs. And you can grow these things for pennies. A gallon jar would most likely cost you 30 cents now to grow. And what you basically do is you put it into a slow turning, masticating juicer, not a fast one. And it's this sappy stuff. It's going to be like sap comes in. And to me, it doesn't taste bad, but to a child it may. You may want to put stevia in or something and have them drink that at least 2-3 ounces 4 times a day. Second thing is raw aloe. Yeah, you can buy a lot of aloe at the health store. It's as dead as a doorknob. Might as well leave it at the store because it does no good to you. So you need to get either the raw aloe leaf, which I personally do. I don't have any of these problems because it's great for your health. Aloe makes any nutrient that you're consuming absorb up to a 20 times higher rate into your cell. It actually saturates and hydrates all of the organ systems of the body and cells of the body. So you could take the raw aloe, cut the top off with a very good knife, with a butter knife, take it out and push the gel down, but you won't want to put it in a blender that long. The most you want it is 8-9 seconds in the blender so you don't oxidize it and kill it. That's why blending foods are not really healthy foods. They're just better than sodas and milk and milkshakes. So you then take that and have them drink that too. That's going to coat the intestinal tract. Now, again, things like sprouts are dynamically nutritious, highest protein foods in the world, highest medicine foods in the world. Even juicing those at first would be it. But you don't want to put in seeds because they have little pockets of infections, inverse or exverse. And they basically, you don't want to get the seeds in there, they can inflame it. You don't want to have heavy things like nuts. Now you can take nuts, we do it here, but you have to make them into a powder, you have to soak them, ferment it a little bit, and they eat in a burger or loaf. But I would avoid that at this point. What I would do at this point is heavily on the green vegetable diet, low on sugary fruits or sugar diets, high on the kind of things I'm speaking about, and then supplement with food so we know that we're getting wide cross sections of nutrients that they're lacking. Because once again, if your gut's not working, your immune system is not working, not maybe, it's definitely not working, and your mind's not working. That's why depression is so high with our youth today, because their guts do not work. And it was chronically that kids in their late teens and early 20s got Crohn's and colitis. Today, we're seeing kids in here at 5 and 6 years old with this. And we're also seeing people on the other end of the scale at 30, 35 are getting this. So it's a big problem. It's not just in your family. And I send you love and support.
Great. Thank you for that, Brian. So as you're well aware, so many of our speakers say that oil and fat hurts the endothelial cells. Is there science either way that is clear on if oil hurts or helps our health? And what about nuts, seeds, and avocados as healthy fats?
Well, number one, there's a little truth on both sides. So I think that people get to be extremists. They're almost like terrorists for their belief system. I'm not a terrorist. I'm a moderate when it comes to this stuff. I think that if you overdo anything, if you overdo water, you could end up sick from it. Put a fire hose in your mouth, turn it on, you're in trouble. So yes, I agree with overconsumption of oil, but I also totally look at the science. They always talk about following the science. Well, I happen to follow the science, just newer science than they're following. There was a study done over in Europe where they took people in Spain completely off all oils. They felt it was so inhumane, they stopped in the middle of the study. They're having neurological difficulties, cognitive problems. I mean, and these are young people. We're not talking about aged people who already had these disorders. So we do have that evidential science, and it's clear today. What I lean to believe is that small amounts of oil over a lifetime, hopefully in the food itself. So you just mentioned some. Avocado, an amazingly good oil. And it has glutathione in there too. Well, why not take both of the benefit? Properly sprouted nuts, sprouted seeds. When you sprout them, it breaks it down from complex proteins to amino acids, from complex carbohydrates to simple sugars, and fats to essential fatty acids. So it literally takes away the work process, the job process. The body has to break it down. And so making it much more adherent to the cell and much less likely to clog up the epithelial that they speak about all of the time. And I have a lot of respect for what they're talking about. But on the other hand, I think that people need to really, as I do, get up every day and challenge my own belief system. And so when you challenge your own belief system, you realize you may not have been quite as right as you were before on something. And, you know, beyond following the science, let's also talk. There's a lot of these people with a disadvantage. They don't do what we do. I'm sitting every day with people coming in here from all over the world and watching the sickest and smartest people in the world. So super healthy people come here and super sick people come here. And when we put them onto a lifestyle, which organic plant-based foods and Great Park Green, we get their head together. We talked about mindfulness. We get them to move and exercise. We watch the results clinically. We're not guessing this. We're not reading somebody else's materials or research and regurgitating it. For instance, today when I'm quoting studies, it's just confirming what I personally have experienced and learned over 53 years of working with 300,000 people. That's literally what I'm doing today. And I'm not saying that some of those people don't have some depth of experience, but I think very few would have that level of depth of experience or deal with the type of people that we are. And so oil is not the devil. the lack of oil is a devil when you get older. I can tell you that.
And what do you think? I don't know if you're familiar with Udo Rasmus. He did
Very much so.
Okay, so he did a panel with Anna Maria the other evening. Just for the audience, he's the author of Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill, and he's a big advocate of oil. He's 81 years old, phenomenal shape, great cognition. Yes. And, he has like 2 to 4 tablespoons a day of oil, but a very specific oil. And what he says is that oils are, almost all the oils that are out there are damaged in the process. And that's really so much of the danger of oil. And he has an oil that he's created a process that supposedly alleviates that damage. What do you think about the veracity of his claim that all these oils, it's really hard to get an oil that isn't extremely damaged by the process of extracting the oil from the plant that it came from?
Well, he's absolutely correct on this. Back when I began with healthy lifestyles, late 60s, early 70s, this was a big conversation about rancidity of oil and cooking of oil. And somehow it went to the wayside. And now there's this big debate, should we eat oil or shouldn't we have oil? And so in the process of extracting oil from plants and seeds, most of the time it's heated. And once it's heated above 115, 120 degrees, it becomes a carcinogen. Not because we think so, we know so. Since when? 1952. I was a little tiny guy, 1952. And so that's a done deal. We know that. And rancidity, I mean, you extract an oil, and most oils are very volatile. And you look at walnut oil, amazingly good for you when it's fresh. But if you sit it for 4 months out on your counter, basically it becomes rancid. So it's bad for you. So that's factual. It's not his opinion. That's factual. I also want to give him an accolade because before Udo Rasputin filled up a van with oils and went around to little health stores all over North America and talked about essential fatty acids, none of us spoke much, if at all, about it. Frankly, he was one of the many people that taught me the significance of oleic acids. And so he's a hero for people who understand, and the science community, by the way, of the importance of oils. Lastly, I'll say that he makes Udo oil. It's very popular in Europe. When I'm in Europe, by the way, when I talk about essential oils, they say Udo oil. That's how popular it is. Here, not as popular. He's a European, as you know. He grew up in Canada, or lived most of the time in Canada. And I think he's a down-to-earth, sensible guy. And he has a lot of proof. People are going to criticize him and say he's not a medical doctor, he's not a scientist. But look, after you've had 40, 50 years of experience working with thousands, tens of thousands, 20,000, 50,000 people, I don't know how many, with him, you actually see the results. He himself healed himself. So some of the people that I've found to be the most authentic, most dynamic, and most effective in their field are people who have self-healed. Because he was really a sick character until he found oils. And that one thing alone put the key in the door of his recovery.
So just a quick follow-up on that. So other than Udo oil, how do we find oil that isn't damaged in the process of making the oil itself?
But you have to find companies that are really ethical, number one. You may notice recently, you've seen in a lot of the press, that most olive oils are not olive oil. That's factual. And by the way, the trees in Italy are all dying. Because they've been not growing them organically. So the soil is getting so depleted because of the heat going up with greenhouse gases. We're having a problem finding oil. So they're mixing a little olive oil at best with a lot of junk oil. So walnut oil from a reputable company, I don't want to name companies, but there's some out there. Foods Alive that's helping to sponsor this. They make great seeds. That's a great way to get oil in that one. Walnut oils from California. Almond oils from California, avocado oil, all organic. Remember, these are heavily sprayed crops. They're not organic, but buy small amounts and refrigerate it. Now, there's no debate on that. If you don't refrigerate it, it's going to perish much quicker than it would be if you stop that from bacteria counts going down. And so you'll probably get 2 up to 3 times greater lifespan out of the oil by doing that. Now, remember, if you're going to eat it 6 o'clock at night, take it out at 5 o'clock. What's really interesting is the monounsaturated olive oil, which I actually like the flavor of olive oil, like the flavor of walnut too, actually gets hard at 32 degrees. Really interesting. So that's how you know it's a monounsaturated. 32 degrees. You take it out, it goes to 30 degrees harder, 40 degrees, it gets soft. So that's what I suggest in small amounts of oil, not large amounts of oil. And I'd prefer, as anyone would tell you sensibly, to get it in a sprout or get it in a seed or a nut.
Excellent. All right. Our next question is coming from Deborah. Where are you from and what is your question?
Hi, it's Debbie from Duxbury, Massachusetts.
Yes.
And I have actually two questions, but I don't know if I can ask them. One, what you spoke in the beginning a lot about cancer and preventing cancer and or treating cancer and the sugar from fruit and all that. What I wanted to ask was, if you are healthy and you don't have cancer, but of course you're always aspiring not to ever get cancer, do you ever let fruit in the diet?
Good question.
And then,
Excellent question.
Hold on, but I have one more before they mute me. And you just kind of said like how about the oils, and I'm not going to name a company. I struggle to find food products that meet all the criteria, even with using Thrive Market, organic, all that kind of stuff. Is there any push in your group and group of people here to, get either, I don't know if it's regulation or get that we can have things that are healthy for us without so much effort? Because I just heard on one of the lectures, like most chickpeas have cadmium or something in them. And that's like a big staple in at least my diet. And I'm running against this barrier into many, many, many different foods, and even going to these markets. And then all of a sudden I look it up and I realize that it's not the product that I thought it was. And it's like a job. So the sugar and the products, those were my questions today. Thank you.
Well, Debbie from Duxbury, I know it well because, as you know, the Institute's from Boston. We were there till 1987, until I moved it down here to Palm Beach, Florida. And so we know it well, and you're making an incredibly valid point that organic became hip and popular. As a matter of fact, on the supplements that we create, I no longer put organic, I put clean, because to me, it's been prostituted to such a level. And when you start to recognize that they are marketing foods more than making sure the quality is good, it's a concern. Now, the same answer I pretty much gave about the oils. There are reputable long-term companies, like Jaffe is one long-term company, as an example, from California. They've been around before I was a health guy. They've been there, this is second or third generation. So you can trust what they're doing. You can also buy seeds. Remember, when you really are serious about your health, taking in your home, even in the middle of January when it's snowing in Massachusetts, seeds, nuts, grains, and beans, and growing them in your kitchen window, you have total control over it. And there are companies that look at quality of seeds, sprouting organic seeds. You can look them up on the internet. Again, we have those available here, but there are other companies around the world that have those available. So you wouldn't want to, if you're in Europe listening to me, or Asia, you wouldn't want to get seeds from North America. You want to get seeds from your part of the world. The other thing is, recognize that vegetables that were picked a week or 2 or 3 weeks earlier in California that are organic are certainly the choice you should make, but also remember that they're not going to have very much nutrition in it. But a sprout that's growing at the time that you actually pick it up and eat it is going to always have massive amounts of nutrition in it. And in the case of sprouts, on an average of 8 times more nutrients. So that means 8 times more vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin C, vitamin D, right down vitamin E, down the list. And that's why you want to take control. So you have to simplify your life, not look for replacements of what you used to eat, because then you start to get into the processing, and just go for the high quality. Everything we do here is at the platinum level. And grant you that it's not always accessible to all of the people in the population, but you have to create your own platinum standards and values. And once you do that, this becomes a simplified process that is easy. Once you create the clothing, you know how to put the clothing on. Every day you'll just do this systematically and routinely. And the second thing you asked about was fruit. And the fruit is a problem in certain areas. Number one is the average fruit today has 28 to 32 times more sugar than the original fruit. Now, how did that happen? Hybridization over millennia. Now, this is not, again, an opinion. It's a factual statement. Agricultural scientists will show you that. So can your body absorb 30 times more sugar than it was meant to from fruit, which, by the way, was a wonderful food for our ancestry? I think fruit was a big part of their diet. No question in my mind about that. But it's been messed with. Number two, the ripeness of fruit is unbelievably problematic. They do not and will not pick fruit ripe. They can't. So if I picked an orange in Florida that was ripe, and they don't ripen here, by the way, until about April, they start picking them in September, and ship it to you in Massachusetts in the middle of winter, and it takes a week to get there. When you open up that box, you'll have rotten oranges. So they pick it a month, 2 months, 3, 4 months early. They tell you it ripens off the tree. That's not true. Like taking a baby out of a mother at the 4th month, not the 9th month. You'd have to put the baby in an incubator for them to survive. Well, your body becomes an incubator for the unripened fruit. So it actually takes minerals out of your teeth, out of your bones. That's why people with arthritic conditions, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, can feel it almost instantaneously. People with gastrointestinal problems can feel it. That unripened fruit, organic or not, is problematic. The only fruit that ripens, I'm not suggesting you eat a lot of this, I don't eat any fruit, is banana. Banana in the skin naturally has enough enzymes to ripen it after you take it from the mother plant. But no other fruit, when you pick it a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months early, in the case of oranges, up to 5, 6 months early, think of that. All they are is high acidity levels.